from our June 27th meeting. May I have a motion to approve if folks have reviewed it?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll take roll call. Chairperson Bonstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Nazarian, Commissioner Ordubegian,
Yes.
Commissioner Yakubian.
I will abstain.
The next is our presentation on the Verdugo Wash project update.
Madam Chairperson Pro Tem, we were informed by Community Development Department that they would like to postpone this presentation until the next TPC meeting.
Very well. Then our action item for today is a motion recommending a preferred bicycle facility alternative for the La Crescent Avenue Rehabilitation Project.
Thank you. Chairperson Pro Tem, members of the Commission, we have a short presentation for you on the La Crescent Avenue Rehab Project. Just as a background, we have provided, as part of this presentation, two alternatives in terms of the design moving forward. And we were initially presented this at a community meeting back in February of 2022. We briefed the council about it, and we were directed to basically reach out to a larger slice of the population, larger group of the population, and make sure everybody is aware of the impact that this project is going to have. Our staff, Public Works staff, has done an extensive outreach over the course of last several months, meeting with different community organizations, and we will present you with the results of what those are, as well as the project itself. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our Deputy Director of Public Works and City Engineer, Sarkis Oganessian.
Thank you, Mr. Emirati. Good evening, Chairperson Pro Temp Bonston and members of the Commission, as well as to everyone in the audience and everybody watching from home. As Mr. Emirati said, this is the La Crescent Avenue Rehabilitation Project briefing overview, and we would like to discuss now what's motivating this project. The Public Works Department maintains a extensive capital improvement program that's guided by our pavement management program. Our pavement management program was recently updated in 2021, and it recommended La Crescent Avenue for street rehabilitation. As part of street rehabilitation projects, there's also additional goals for this project that include active transportation improvements. Some of those include promoting walking and bicycling, improved access to transit, encouraging shared mobility, and improving ADA access throughout the corridor. As of July 1st, 2020, California state law also required agencies to use the vehicle miles traveled analysis, which we'll get into later in the presentation, as a way of evaluating transportation impacts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The vehicle miles traveled analysis also encourages the development of multimodal transportation networks. The existing corridor conditions on La Crescent Avenue consist of the following. It is approximately a 1.6 mile major arterial corridor with existing 2 lanes of travel in each direction and on-street parking. There's 5 signal intersections located throughout this project corridor at North Verdugo, Roselawn, Shirley Jean, Honolulu, and Montrose. Most of the corridor is residential in nature, with some multifamily and commercial use north of Honolulu Avenue. Fremont Elementary School is located on Paloma Avenue in the heart of the corridor. The Verdugo Wash is located on the west side, south of Shirley Jean. And there's various HOAs located throughout and have access to La Crescent Avenue. Furthermore, the posted speed limit is 40 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile measured speed for northbound traffic is 45 miles per hour, and southbound traffic is 46 miles per hour. as measured. For this project, the proposed scope of work will include the removal and replacement of the 1.6 miles of roadway. It'll also include improvements to traffic signals, fiber optic infrastructure, ADA infrastructure, planting of new trees, infrastructure to capture and treat stormwater, new striping and pavement markings, including creative crosswalks and high visibility crosswalks. It will also implement the use of cool pavement or reflective pavement to mitigate the heat island effects in front of Fremont School. There will also be bicycle facility upgrades as part of this project that we are also here to discuss. The anticipated construction schedule will take place approximately beginning in spring of 2023 and last approximately 6 months until fall of 2023. Project location map is shown in front of you. It takes place on La Crescenta Avenue between North Verdugo Road to the south and Montrose Avenue to the north. A majority of the street improvements and the bicycle infrastructure improvements, as well as the fiber optic, traffic signals, the reflective pavement will exist on this corridor and the surrounding adjacent streets. As you can see, there's a fire station located in the limits, as well as a Fremont Elementary School. So today's discussion, we'd like to also discuss further, is the bicycle facility study. The La Crescenta Avenue is designated as a study corridor in the Glendale Bicycle Transportation Plan, adopted by City Council. As part of this plan, the corridor was recommended for a bicycle facility study, and this study, of which we hired a consultant to conduct, encompassed two alternatives that we'll discuss further. Alternative one was the installation of a Class 2 bicycle lane, protected and buffered. Alternative two was the installation of a Class 3 bike route signage, such as sharrows, often referred to. For alternative one, bicycle lane, that will consist of the installation of a Class 2 colored bike lane, buffered and protected amongst most of the segments, with a road repurposing of the corridor. It would require the reduction of 2 travel lanes to 1 lane in each direction. It would add dedicated bicycle lanes on both sides for northbound and southbound traffic with a protective barrier. It'll also include a center two-way left turn lane. Alternative 2 would keep the corridor designated as a bike route as it is now and add the B-type green sharrows on the pavement for bicyclists. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the alternatives. The upper cross-section, and this is for La Crescenta Avenue for the northern portion between Montrose Avenue and Shirley Jean Street. The roadway right-of-way is wider for this northern portion at 64 feet wide. And the reason for that, and because of that, we can add buffered bicycle lanes on both sides of the corridor and reduce the travel lanes to 1 lane in each direction. And add a center two-way running left turn lane. Alternative 2, the sharrows alternative, would keep the existing travel lane configuration and add the B-type green sharrows on the outside most travel lane. Both alternatives would protect parking. For the southern portion of the corridor, the right-of-way is 10 feet smaller, and for this corridor, for alternative 1, we'll be able to install a buffered and protected bike lane on the west side, running parallel to the Verdugo Wash, by reducing lanes of travel again from 2 to 1 and adding a center two-way left turn lane. Alternative number 2, the sharrows would again just install B-type green sharrows on the outside travel lanes. So as part of the study, we also conducted a roadway safety analysis, an assessment, as you would. And the following slides will discuss this in further detail. As part of a corridor collision analysis that was conducted for a 10-year period from April 2010 to April 2020, revealed 154 collisions per the statewide system resource, otherwise known as SWITRs. The types of collisions identified in our analysis were broadside collisions and rear-end collisions primarily, followed by head-on, other types of collisions, sidewalk pedestrian, and there were no bicycle collisions reported throughout the corridor. A majority of the intersection collisions were both broadside and rear end. A safety benefit analysis was then conducted, which is based on the Caltrans Local Road Safety Manual that shows an estimated reduction of approximately 30% in collisions for lane repurposing projects. What that means for this corridor is that on La Crescenta Avenue, as a result of alternative number 1, that would equate to an estimated reduction of 92 accidents over a 20-year period. And the 2016 Caltrans Office of Economic Analysis branch estimated that each accident cost approximately $185,600. This is a statewide average, by the way. What are some of the lane repurposing study takeaways as a result of the vehicle miles traveled analysis that we conducted? For alternative number 1, there would be an overall decrease in total vehicle trips. This would translate to a decrease in vehicle miles traveled on La Crescenta Avenue, the main corridor in study, as well as Cañada Boulevard, North Verdugo Road, and Honolulu Avenue. There would be an increase in vehicle miles traveled potentially at Rosemont Avenue, Ocean View Avenue, Broadview Avenue, and the 2 freeway where most of that traffic trying to go through the corridor should mainly be going. And this all shows that there's a potential increase in congestion levels, however, at manageable levels. It would also relate to an increase and improvement in other modes of transportation, the active transportation goals that we were talking about initially. Alternative 2 for Sharrows would not create any changes in vehicle miles traveled. And I'm sorry if that doesn't show up on that slide, but that is what it says below. So at this point, let's talk about our public outreach efforts. In February 2022, we held a virtual community meeting in these chambers to discuss the project progress in general. After that meeting, we then briefed our city council, who asked us to go out to the community and reach out to an expanded pool of residents and stakeholders. The next few slides will highlight that effort that we undertook to reach out to as many community members and organizations as possible near the project corridor who wanted to meet with us and wanted to speak to us. So as I indicated earlier, we held a community meeting in February of 2022. Prior to that meeting, we mailed out approximately over 2,000 mailers to the affected community within a sizable radius of the project corridor. And the overall support from that community meeting was for alternative 1, the bicycle lane alternative. After City Council asked us to go out and reach out to an extensive list of the community and organizations, we then had a virtual presentation with the Montrose Shopping Park Association that was held in March of 2022. And the overall support from that organization was for alternative 2, the bicycle Sharrows. We then had an in-person presentation with the Whiting Woods Property Owners Association in June. And the overall support of that meeting was for alternative 2, bicycle Sharrows. We then had a virtual presentation with the Crescent Valley Chamber of Commerce further in June, and their overall support was for alternative 2, bicycle Sharrows. We followed that up with a virtual presentation with the Crescent Valley Community Association in late June, and their overall support was for alternative 1, bicycle lanes. We then had an in-person presentation with the Sycamore Woods Association, and the overall support was for alternative 2, bicycle Sharrows. We followed that up with an in-person presentation in late June with the Oakmont Country Club Board, and their overall support was for alternative 1, bicycle lanes. We followed that up with another in-person presentation with the Oakmont Woods Community Association, and the overall support was for alternative 2, bicycle Sharrows. We then held 2 email campaigns, one by the Glendale Police Department who sent an email to stakeholders in North Glendale. Every community street block captain, neighborhood watch captain north of Verdugo Park. And their publication list was over 360 contacts long. And that was in mid-July of 2022. We then also reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber of Commerce, and they also published an email publication on behalf of the city regarding this project. We most recently, last week, held a hybrid in-person and virtual meeting with the Crescent Valley Town Council. At that meeting, we were presenting virtually, but that meeting was taking place in person. And there were 3 speakers that came up to the podium, 2 in support of Alternative 1 bicycle lanes and 1 in support of Alternative 2 bicycle sharrows. And today's meeting with the Transportation and Parking Commission, prior to the meeting at 5 p.m., we have received 37 emails in support of Alternative 1 and 4 emails and calls in support of Alternative 2. At 5:06 p.m., if I recall correctly, we also received another additional email in support of Alternative 1 for the bicycle lanes. On top of that, we've also received miscellaneous email responses throughout our outreach efforts, 15 in support of Alternative 1 and 6 in support of Alternative 2 to date. And as you can see, we've had in-person meetings, virtual meetings, email campaigns. We've also conducted social media outreach on our social media channels. We've updated our project website as frequently as possible to make sure that we reach out to an extensive part of the community that will be impacted by this project, so we can hear from them and hear what they have to say about the project. And we feel that we have received enough opinion to be able to come in front of you today for your opinion on a motion to select a alternative that we can then proceed to City Council with. On the screen for the public are the contacts of this project. The first contact is myself. The second contact is the project manager, Mr. Rostam Tavidian. And the final contact is our public outreach liaison, Ms. Yvonne Guerra. With that, I would like to open up to any questions or comments that the commission may have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? At this time, I feel, I personally don't, and would be ready to hear from the public when we have a moment to.
If I may, the community outreach, I feel that we don't reach out to most of our residents correctly. 2,000 flyers doesn't represent the entire neighborhood. So I want to know, how do you send those cards out? Is it being USPS mapping tool being utilized to be able to reach out to people that they're impacted with this project or not? And I think it should be more than 2,000. I know personally a lot of people don't even have any clue about this project. So the outreach wasn't done in a way that, you know, a lot of people can have an input on it. So just like to hear about that. How do you go about sending those cards out and getting people involved?
So Commissioner Odubekian, in regards to the community mailers, the 2,000 mailers were sent prior to the first virtual community meeting on February of 2022. In regards to those mailers, they're usually mailed out to a 500-foot radius of the entire project corridor. So from North Verdugo all the way up to Montrose Avenue, 500-foot radius along La Crescenta Avenue. That list of mailers is compiled from our Glendale Water and Power utility paying customers. And if they're renters, it's also mailed to the homeowners on record for that residence.
Do you think that's sufficient enough to be able to get everybody's input on this? Because I know Post Office has this program called Every Door Direct Mailer, and a mapping tool online that allows you to reach out to a broader neighborhood. And the cost of doing that is 1/3 of the regular mailers, so we can reach out to more people. I just want to know if that's ever considered or not.
So we will look into that, but as a result of our community outreach, after those mailers were sent, is when we made the effort to reach out to the various community organizations to make sure that this project is heard by all members of the community that are affected.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions at this point, I'm suggesting that we go ahead and hear from the public, and then we can continue our discussion after that. I see that there are 14 cards of speakers and 4 members calling in. And do we normally start with the call-ins or the people in person? Thanks for our live conversation here as you give me details. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the folks in the room. And given the relatively few number, and I say that only because we did receive so many emails, I was actually anticipating we might have more phone calls in. I'm going to suggest 2-minute time period for folks to talk. Thank you very much. And I guess with that, I'll go ahead and call the first speaker, Patrick Murphy.
Good evening, Chairperson Pro Tem and Commission members. My name is Patrick Murphy. I live at 3036 Sycamore Avenue. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. The public outreach, we are more than 500 feet away from La Crescent Avenue. We did not receive a card or any mailer. Direct mail is not done to the community. I want to thank Rustam and Pastor for coming out to Sycamore Woods on that Saturday morning to spend time with us. I was asked to produce a map of the area where we should have direct mail, and it was Spar Heights and Sycamore Woods and a little bit further up on Montreux, above Honolulu. I didn't get a mailer. The voting matrix, I know that that is not representative of the community staff not using it as a hard vote, that it's just an indication of how people feel. I can tell you that unanimously in our neighborhood, we are against it. And the reason being is we're getting it now, cut through traffic, and we're going to get more cut through traffic if we go with alternative 1. We are very much in favor of going with alternative 2 if this is a foregone conclusion. There was a presentation that the safety benefit analysis was done in reducing accidents. Well, there were no risk analysis done on our block. Took a video the other night when it's dark out, and it's going to get dark pretty soon here in the evenings, and with the cut-through traffic, we have minimal lighting, we don't have sidewalks there, it's going to get dangerous, people walk their dogs, they walk with their children, it's dangerous. There have been no bicycle accidents over the 10-year scenario. I would prefer slowing traffic down on that street with a reduced speed limit, monitoring devices and enforcement, and maybe reflectors that slow traffic down. That traffic needs to slow down on that street. The 1.7 miles, it does not merge with an alternative 1 on Cañada or Verdugo. So people are going to be riding from Montrose down to Cañada and Verdugo there, and where do they go from there?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Rich Bolin. Forgive me if I did not read that correctly.
Actually, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Those are C's, not L's.
Commissioners, it's okay. I'm a kindergarten teacher by trade. Staff, members of the community, I'm here to support your recommendation for alternative 1. I'm from Spar Heights. The Spar Heights community is very proud of our work to improve the overall satisfactory safety in our neighborhood. We're involved with the CERT program, Glendale PD Community Academy. I'm a Glendale PD block captain. I never got a message about this event, about this whole process. I'm one of those folks, as Patrick just said, I'm house number 15 on Okitis, so I don't fit your 500-foot rule. So we believe we're mapping out our community right now. We have 38 of our 53 residences that are mapping out. We're all safer together. Unfortunately, I just made mention, I'm more than 500 feet away. I got notice on this whatsoever. I would like to have thought you guys did a great job of reaching out to the community, great data. But, Fremont Elementary School would have been a great place to have a community meeting when school is in session in the spring. You get kids in the room, they bring something home, moms and dads show up. You talked about the collisions, 150 over the last decade, talked about the speed limit. We used to post PD on motorbikes up and down that boulevard. It made a bit of a difference. Patrick's right, it is way too fast. I think by slowing down that street, one lane in each direction, we haven't had as many people riding bikes 10 years ago as we do these days. Old guys like me, I don't want to get killed on that street. It's dangerous. Your BTP outlines 4 goals. I'm not going to review those, but I do want to make mention that your North Glendale Community Plan, which was adopted by the city in 2011, page 67, indicates that La Crescenta Avenue is to have a bike lane, otherwise known as a Class 2, not just a Sharrow, which meets the intent of your recommendation for Alternative 1. I appreciate to have the opportunity to chat with you all today. I will do a better job working with my kindergarten kids on their penmanship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Jean Gleason. And just a gentle reminder to the speakers, go ahead and direct your comments at us. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the commission, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Jean Gleason. I've been a 40-year resident of Glendale, live in Verdugo Woodlands, and I'm an avid bicyclist. I've appeared before this commission and others before on this very issue when they were redesigning La Crescenta, I think 10 or 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and it was shot down. And it's too bad because the street, as many of the thoroughfares in Glendale, is a speedway, and you can see that with the average speeds. I ride average 100 miles a week on my bicycle, so I know all the streets of Glendale, and I see how dangerous they can be. Now, we don't have any deaths of bicyclists on that street, so that's a good thing, but maybe that's just a bit of good luck. I'm all in favor of Alternative 1. I think it's the solution to slow people down. I personally would go for roundabouts too, besides instead of the traffic lights, because I think that does the same thing, slows people down, but keeps the traffic moving at a pace that allows them to get from point A to point B in a actually faster time than stopping at stoplights and then picking up speed and stopping again, my personal opinion. I think it's important to realize that a lot of the improvements in the designs of these thoroughfares have been thwarted by motorists and residents who just don't want to give up the fact that they own the streets. I think it's important that we join other communities around California that have made these changes and have found the opposition quite strong, but in time after they're made, they find that they work quite well, and people get used to them, and they become part of the enhancement of a community and the way that people live in that community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Roberta Medford, followed by Martha Sensel.
Hi, all. My name is Roberta Medford. I live on Sycamore. I guess not 500 feet close to Sycamore, close to La Crescenta, but I'm only about 5 or 6 houses. And I'm also speaking for 4 other families that live very close to me on Sycamore and wanted me to speak for them also. Dan Queen and Sol Davis, Mary Collins, and Andrea Humberger are right there with me on Sycamore and wanted me to let them know I'm speaking for them too. My husband will not go out to the end of our street and turn left on La Crescenta because the traffic coming up north on La Crescenta is coming too fast and there are too many parked cars close to Sycamore. It's not safe. So he goes all the way around to make a left turn at another place. I really support option 1. I think it will make it a lot safer. The number of accidents is unacceptable. The close residents do not think of La Crescenta as an expressway to get on and off the 2. We use it to go to the nursery the plant nursery, the schools, and La Crescenta Avenue. I mean, La Crescenta Elementary is also just a few blocks north of this project, which I don't know why it didn't continue all the rest of the way up La Crescenta, why it stopped at Montrose. But there's another huge elementary school right along La Crescenta. We use it to go to the dentist. We use it to go to the post office there in Verdugo City. We use it to go up to Foothill to the grocery stores. We're not just racing back and forth to the freeway as fast as we can go. I do not understand how cut-through traffic on an east-west street would be affected by something that happened on a north-south street, so I must be missing that. I think option 1 is the best option. The left turn lane will make it much, much safer, and protected bike lanes are good for the planet and good for our health to encourage more biking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having the meeting and allowing us to speak. My name is Martha Sensel. I've lived in the Verdugo Woodlands for 24 years. I'm an avid recreational cyclist, and I do bike on La Crescenta Avenue, although I don't consider it safe, and I'm very careful when I ride on it. I'm a strong supporter of option 1. I am especially pleased that it goes along with other road improvements, including pavement and curb, and in particular, the changing of the sewer grade. The current one is very dangerous for cyclists. It's right in the middle of the bike lane where La Crescenta meets Verdugo Road, and it's very unsafe. So I recently saw honeycomb-shaped grates, and I hope that that's something that you're looking at because the tire can't get caught in it. A little aside there. I really believe that option 1 is the best for the entire community. The traffic on La Crescenta is never heavy in my experience, but always going very fast. 40 is probably too high for that corridor to begin with, and people are traveling way above 40. So I wanted to just note that I attended 2 public meetings on Zoom, and I heard a lot of support for the project. And one of the things that concerns me is that, as others have expressed, it's not clear that all the most important stakeholders have been consulted, and in particular the residents who live around the elementary school and the families who attend the elementary school. It would certainly make their lives safer. They expressed fear walking and biking their children to school. And when the tallies were given for the various outreaches, it seemed like equal weight was being given to a meeting of 5 members of an HOA as a larger gathering of 40 participants. So I would like to see a more equal weighting of that. And is my time up? I also was confused about the increased traffic resulting from it didn't quite make sense how Rosemont and Broadway would be impacted. So maybe some further clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Edward Gonzalez, followed by Jennifer Ho.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Edward Gonzalez. My wife and I are homeowners in La Crescenta, 1 block from La Crescenta Avenue, just north of the 210. As a regular driver through the corridor, I know that this street encourages high speeds with blind corners that are a recipe for traffic violence, as the data bears out. I support alternative 1 with the center turnout and reduced lanes of travel. The reduced lanes of travel would provide a natural speed deterrent, and even a seemingly large speed reduction on this road should result in less than a minute of additional travel time, while making the road significantly safer for all road users. While cut-through traffic concerns are valid, the city can work with the community to monitor the situation and optimize any long-term issues. The additional bicycle lanes will also help form part of what should be a growing network of transportation network that provides safe, joyful, healthy, and for some, the only transit options besides passenger auto traffic. The lack of existing bicycle use or incidents is not indicative of intrinsic road safety, so much as existing fear and discomfort in sharing the road. Alternative 1 presents a positive step forward for Glendale and our region as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ho. My husband and I live a block away from La Crescenta Avenue, just north of the 210 freeway, and frequently take La Crescenta Avenue down to businesses in Montrose Shopping Park and to the La Crescenta Nursery. As someone who takes the car 99% of the time to get around the neighborhood, I support option 1, to add bike lanes and a center turn lane. I do not enjoy driving. It causes me anxiety and stress. And every year it seems that the amount of vehicles on the road and traffic gets worse. It's simply not fun and not sustainable. The only reason I drive is because it seems that this city is built around cars. I would like to see diversification of our modes of transportation. Adding bike lanes is a good start. Getting more people to be active will also help with public health outcomes. Plus, riding bikes can also help tackle the failing air quality problem we all suffer from in Los Angeles. I support option 1, and thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker is Scott Ellis, followed by David Mariscal.
Good evening. Thanks to the commission for having us here. I am the father of 3 youth cyclists that live on Angeles Avenue, which touches La Crescenta, right in the heart of what you're talking about. I also ride my bike about 100 miles a week, and I would never take La Crescenta Avenue to get home, and my street touches La Crescenta Avenue. I have to take Verdugo and go around because that is, in my opinion, a crazy street, and I think the reason you have no bicycle accidents on it is because a smart cyclist would not take that street. I've also been hit and broke my collarbone by a car turning left on a street that had Sharrows, Fountain Avenue in Los Angeles. That was an unpleasant experience. And so I'm in favor of alternative 1 in hopes that, someday when these guys go to middle school and they have to go north, they're going to choose La Crescenta Avenue with bike lanes because I don't know how else they're going to get up there if they want to ride their bike. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to flag really quick if there's an opportunity to play a video piece that I'd sent out to the Transportation Committee. If not, that's okay. I can do it without.
Are you Mr. Mariscal?
Yes.
I'll have to defer to staff as to whether technologically you can.
Yes, that one. And then, yeah, you could play that one in a second. I'll nod to you when I'm ready. Awesome. All right. Good evening, Madam Chairperson and the Transportation Committee. My name is David Mariscal, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide a comment today in support of option 1. I grew up in the Verdugo Woodlands, not too far from the project site, and I'm also an avid cyclist that uses La Crescenta at times very carefully with my younger brother. Option 1 will bring much needed traffic calming measures along the La Crescenta corridor. One of the main arguments we've heard against option 1 is that it's going to result in traffic backlog against La Crescenta and nearby residential streets, and I respectfully disagree. La Crescenta does not have a traffic and congestion problem, it has a speeding and safety problem. This past Friday afternoon, I jumped on my bike and recorded some footage along the southern half of the La Crescenta corridor near Shirley Jean and submitted that video for review. This footage failed to capture significant traffic activity during peak hours. It's actually quite boring for a Friday afternoon. However, it does clearly show speeding cars, precarious conditions for cyclists riding northbound, and a dangerous left turn conditions for motorists, especially at the intersection of La Crescenta and Oakmont View Drive. I ask this commission to please support adopting option 1 and include protected bike lanes with a barrier. This option will mitigate speeding cars without causing congestion and provide a safe and desirable space for all people to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Travis Brown, followed by Alex Barthosuf. And I think I messed up your last name, so I apologize. And if you could pronounce it when you come up, I'd appreciate learning.
Okay, thank you for having me, commissioners. As a local resident, I've spent a lot of time walking, biking, and driving this road, and I can attest that these fixes are long overdue. I'd like to express my full support for option 1. I've personally witnessed multiple serious accidents and have nearly been hit several times myself. I currently have a 4th grader, 3rd grader, and kindergartner attending Fremont Elementary School. I bike with them every morning from my house on Glenwood Avenue to the school about 1 mile south. Because of the dangerous state of this road, we try to be safe by riding on the sidewalks, but this is also quite dangerous. We try to share the narrow sidewalk with pedestrians, navigate obstacles like garbage cans and overgrown foliage, and cross side roads where cars often pull out from blind corners to turn onto La Crescenta or pull off of La Crescenta at high speeds. I worry that my kids will fall off the sidewalk and into the high-speed traffic just feet away. Afterwards, when I bike home, I try to stay on the road to avoid hitting the other parents that are walking and biking their kids to school. But this ride is sheer terror. Cars are flying by at high speeds, mere feet to my left, and an endless row of parked cars pins me in from the right. When it comes time to turn left into my neighborhood, I usually give up and ride past to try to find a safe place to turn. The whole road is simply a nightmare. My wife repeats this same dangerous activity twice more later in the day. It's hard to believe that a road like this is allowed to exist right next to one of our main elementary schools. Sad part is that this road's not much better for cars. Since my children are in sports, I'm constantly driving down La Crescenta on my way to soccer and baseball fields, like Babe Herman, Verdugo Park, Montrose Park, and Glorieta. While I appreciate the high throughput and high speed of this road, I think some compromise can be made to make it a safer road. I've seen several near accidents caused by the lack of a center turn lane. People going southbound will attempt to make a left turn into Spar Heights, and the cars behind them will frantically make lane changes at the last minute to try to avoid them. It happens on the southbound way as well. You know, people will try to turn right onto places like Shirley Jean, and the cars coming down behind them won't have time to react, and I've actually seen accidents there too. Then people going northbound, they're kind of pinned in with this, line of cars parked next to them, and at these speeds, they can a single miscalculation can put you into that line of cars. As a pedestrian, La Crescenta Avenue, 2 minutes goes fast. Thank you for your time, commissioners.
Thank you. Hello, sir. Will you please pronounce your name correctly for me?
Yes, hello. My name is Alec Bartrosov, resident of Glendale, also former Transportation and Parking Commissioner. Good to see you, Mara. And thank you for your service. I'm here to support option 1. I believe that adding bike lanes is very important. That is an opportunity to contribute to the safety of the corridor. I do reject this narrative that we are choosing between 2 bicycle facilities. I think the main idea to drive home to the commission and to council is that one is an option that provides absolute safety to the community, and the other does absolutely nothing for the community. So Sharrows, in my opinion, as a transportation professional, is inappropriate on a street where cars are going 4 to 6 miles an hour and quite often even much faster. It provides no benefit to bicyclists, and it provides no safety benefit to other folks that are using the roadway. So the decision before you, quite frankly, in my opinion, is that we are choosing between an option that factually saves lives, that reduces the number of collisions. According to the report, that's 30%, or 100 collisions in the next 20 years. Or we can choose to move forward with an option that does absolutely nothing and accepts this idea that we have a street design that will contribute to another 83 collisions in the next 5 years, will contribute another 150 collisions for the next 10 years. So you have an option. One is obviously safer than the other, and I hope that you'll make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Chris Welch.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Walsh. I am a longtime resident of Glendale and also served on the TPC alongside Board Member Kubian as well. So more than 10 years ago, the state of California adopted Assembly Bill 1358, the California Complete Streets Act. That law requires communities like ours to reduce vehicle miles traveled, to shift rides away from cars towards biking, walking, etc. Furthermore, just a month ago, this city council in this chamber was provided a presentation leading towards the adoption of a Vision Zero effort within the city of Glendale. Vision Zeros, obviously, are all about improving safety, reducing vehicular speeds, making the public right-of-way safe for all modes of transportation. You have before you tonight two options for the capital improvements. These will be long-term improvements. So it's not just something you can change immediately. This is long-term. And only one of those options, option one, actually meets the spirit of the Complete Streets Act and meets with the goal of a Vision Zero project. The benefits of this alternate one: safer routes for bicycles, induced demand for bicycle usage. We've heard speakers here saying they won't ride on it because it's not safe. If you create safe routes, people will use it. A center turning lane especially will enhance the safety of those making left turns. That's a very particular important part of that alternative. And I believe, like other speakers, that it will reduce average speeds. So basically, the bottom line is this: only alternative one actually changes the design of the streets, which would have an impact on speed and safety. Only alternative one meets the requirements of the Complete Streets Act. Only alternative one would be a step towards a Vision Zero future, and only alternative one would actually reduce vehicle miles traveled. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ben Ruddy. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ben, and I'm 11 years old, and I go to school at Fremont Elementary next to La Crescent Avenue. Whenever I go to school, I either walk or bike. Lots of cars pass me every day. When I try talking to my family, all noise gets blocked out by the sounds of cars speeding. It feels like whenever I walk, a car is close to hitting me, and most cars go past the speed limit. Me and my friends play tag as we walk home, and the cars aren't paying attention to kids on the sidewalk because we're too small. Most of the cars cut us off as we cross the road, and they're trying to turn right from La Crescenta into Spar Heights. When cars come down a hill, they can't see us while we're crossing because of blind spots and speeding. Just being next to the sidewalk, I'm getting worried about getting hit by a car. If I happen to trip and fall from the sidewalk, a speeding car will definitely hit me. Kids are just kids. We like to play as we're walking, and when we playfully push each other, a car will for sure hit us. When I'm walking, bikes ride down the sidewalk because it's too dangerous on the road and we have very little space to get out of the way. That's why Glendale should put a separate space for bikes on the road so we can walk safely without having to dodge bikes. And when we do bike, it's hard to not hit people walking because of narrow sidewalks, but I'm too scared of the road. There's too much speeding cars that will hit me. When cars go really fast, they kill small, innocent, and wild animals, and I've seen roadkill many times before on the road. Cars also use a lot of gas while they're speeding and cause global warming. You're probably feeling the heat change recently. Sometimes I want to walk to school, and it's so hot and humid, and it doesn't make me want to walk or bike anymore. I think it would be great if Glendale...
Go ahead and finish your sentence, please.
If Glendale made a separate pathway for bikes, trees, and pedestrians instead of cars. So I vote for option 1. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next speaker, Anna Taruna Ruddy. And please repronounce your name correctly for me. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and City staff. My name's Ana Tabuena Ruddy, and I'm a 30-year Glendale resident who live on Malafia, just a block off of La Crescenta Avenue. I have an 11-year-old who you just heard speak, and he goes to school at Fremont Elementary. We walk and bike to school every day. Just like other folks, we have not heard about this meeting tonight. We heard it through word of mouth. And I think that we should have an outreach at the local school. And I believe kids count as double when you do a survey. Also, I'd be curious to know of the folks that have been surveyed, how many are just drivers and how many are actually walking and biking to school. We'd love to see that number. I think my son did a better job on his speech, so I will skip the same things that he's already mentioned. I did bring some slide deck. I think there's just 4, which I think folks here have confirmed that we can show that.
Thank you.
So while she's pulling it up, I just wanted to say that we prefer option 1, alternative 1, because as a pedestrian, we are competing for space in narrow sidewalks with folks on bikes. As a bicyclist, it allows for a dedicated space in the roadway separate from fast-moving traffic, from having to run over pedestrians on the sidewalks. And then as a driver, it provides a safe space without fear of getting hit by fast-moving traffic as we try to navigate into or out of Spar Heights. And also as we're panicking to get onto the traffic on La Crescenta, we're missing the folks that are crossing the streets. So here you can see the narrow sidewalks that we have to navigate and share with bikers, joggers, folks that are going to school, dog walkers. That is what we have to face for a majority of the stretch on La Crescenta Avenue. Next slide, please. Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad. This morning also was trash day. Yeah, I think if you click on the arrow, yeah, there you go. Today was also trash day. So in addition to having to navigate bicyclists, people walking their dogs, jogging, and kids going to school, we also have to navigate trash bins. And the reason that residents put that on the sidewalk is because they're afraid cars will hit their trash bins. So we're having to now deal with this obstacle on the roadway. Next slide, please. In addition to that, here is where there are slip lanes and blind spots. So cars are coming out of Spar Heights into La Crescenta. They're on a rush to join the traffic. And in their rush to join traffic, they're not quite paying attention to folks that are crossing the streets here. There's just multiple crossings all along La Crescenta Avenue. Next slide, please. And then here you can see, I circled it in red, are folks trying to get out of their cars to drop off their kids. They will have to wait until traffic clears before they can get out of their cars. I believe that's the last slide. So that's just a visual of what we have to deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers that have provided cards. I'll just give the crowd one last opportunity if you were inspired by anyone that spoke or you want to submit a card. In the meantime, it sounds like we could probably queue up the callers.
Joe Oliver, you're on the air.
Good evening, members of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Joe Oliver. I'm a resident property owner of the 2800, 2900 block of Piedmont Avenue in the Glendale incorporated area of La Crescenta. My purpose speaking before you this evening is to implore you to address an issue that has become a traffic and parking thorn in the sides of residents on this block of Piedmont for the past 3 years. Specifically, the parking of large construction and transport, as well as private vehicles owned by a single resident, 19 vehicles at last count. In addition to monopolizing street parking, this individual is operating contracted construction and other businesses involving the use of large vehicles.
Excuse me,
and
sir.
Deliveries and shipping. Yes.
Can we pause you? Are you here to speak about item 5A, the bike lanes?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay. Could we queue up the folks that might be speaking on this item first?
Yes, I think item 4A is what you're speaking about, sir. That may have been, that item was canceled.
No, ma'am. I'm speaking about something that is not on the agenda.
Would you mind holding, sir, until the end of the agenda when we're done with this item to speak on items not
Absolutely.
before us? Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Catherine Smith, you're on the air.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for your attention today and for this space that you're holding on this matter. I am in full support, and so is my partner of Alternative One. We moved a year and a half. It's such a gem, such a beautiful place. We love it here, and I have a lot of respect for people who have lived here longer and have strong views. And I just think of this idea that we all keep coming back to is like, what is community? And like a highway running through these streets, these residential areas, and past the school. Like, that story touches me so much. And I think about my childhood. I think all of us, imagine when you were a kid, didn't you ride your bike places? The fact that we even allow this to happen, you know, like any accident, we don't have to wait for an accident to fix something. I had the honor of working on the Vision Zero campaign with the city of Los Angeles for a stint, and I've seen the data. I invite everyone to actually look at the data. We have an opportunity to create a safe community for our kids and for all of us. I want to ride the bike. I cannot wait to ride the bike with my partner. We'll go to the farmer's market, and then, you know, we'll go down to the park. Maybe I'll take skateboarding lessons. It's going to be great. Anyways, full support of Alternative One, and thank you so much for what you're all doing.
Thank you.
Joaquin Sequez, you're on the air. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for considering bike facilities along this corridor of La Crescent Avenue. Again, my name is Joaquin Sequez. I'm a registered traffic engineer with almost 20 years of practicing experience, and I live on Arquitas Avenue, 2 houses away from La Crescent Avenue. I've lived here for over 15 years, and I strongly urge the Commission to recommend Alternative One. I am not an avid cyclist, but I do drive this street every day, and I do walk it multiple times a week. I think that Alternative One provides a complete safety package for the street. The addition of the 2-way left turn lanes eliminates the zigzagging that I see daily with vehicles trying to cut around other vehicles that are slowing to turn left into one of the dozens of driveways or various cross streets along the south section of La Crescent Avenue. And the addition of bicycle lanes pushes traffic further from the sidewalk. As you've heard from some of the other public comments today, the sidewalk is very narrow at some locations. I often find myself walking in the street to cross somebody that's walking the other way because this is the only sidewalk on this section of street. There is no sidewalk on the other side of the street. I am also sympathetic to the concerns from the Sycamore Neighborhood Association about cut-through traffic. It sounds like that may be an existing condition. And looking at the plans, there is no work that's going to be done on Honolulu Avenue, which would reduce capacity of Honolulu. And there's also the new left turn signal at Honolulu and La Crescent Avenue, which allows that northbound left turn to be served entirely with one cycle with that existing green arrow there that's there on Honolulu and La Crescent. So the existing traffic conditions in both the AM and PM peak are very light. There is no congestion. While there is traffic and it's traveling fast, I don't anticipate any additional congestion if the intersections are designed correctly. Again, I thank you very much for your time today, and I strongly urge the Commission to recommend Alternative One with the bike lanes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Hovland, you're on the air.
Good evening, members of the Transportation and Parking Commission. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to comment. I am a 25-year Glendale resident and regular bicycle commuter. I participated in the Glendale Bike Transportation Plan as a resident stakeholder. I regularly go past this corridor, and I travel this corridor when I need to get to and from La Crescent by bicycle. I avoid this corridor when I can because I consider it dangerous as it is currently implemented. I support Alternative One and only Alternative One. It makes La Crescent Avenue safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and car drivers. People constantly exceed the speed limit and drive recklessly on this corridor. I look forward to a day that this corridor is safe for all, pedestrians, cyclists, and car drivers. Communities that have strong support of active transportation are healthier communities. Glendale needs infrastructure like Alternative One. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vaughn Bedikian, you're on the air.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak today. I initially, when I called, I was going to talk as a bicyclist, and then I realized that while my mother lived on the corner of Paloma and Glencoe, I would have difficulty making left turns onto La Crescenta to go back to my home in the Verdugo woodlands. And I remember a lady that spoke earlier that said that her husband had to circumvent that by going another route to get onto La Crescenta. And I would pose that we've probably had a lot fewer accidents than we would have because of the extra steps that cautious drivers have taken to avoid using La Crescenta Expressway, as I will refer to it. So as a driver, definitely I support number one, alternative number one. As a bicyclist, I ride about, I would say 60 miles, not quite 100. And I'm probably in the category of crazy for actually using La Crescenta Expressway. It's exceedingly scary, but there's no other alternative if I'm going to go from the woodlands up to the Montrose area and then back. So I'm pushing for alternative one. I think it's the right thing to do. You've heard a lot of moving comments today, and I applaud everyone that has come out to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ani Garibian, you're on the air.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's difficult to speak after so many speakers because everyone pretty much made the point that I wanted to make. But I also wanted to talk about how option one promotes equity, whereas option two doesn't. Studies have shown that women tend to use bike lanes when they are protected. And when 50% of the population are female, it's important that we make sure that everyone feels safe enough to ride these bike lanes. Not only women, but elderly and children need protected bike lanes. Parents should not have to drop off their kids in cars. They could walk and bike just as they used to in movies that I've seen. So I definitely support option one. Option two isn't really an option. It doesn't really do much for the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joanna Pringle, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm Joanna Pringle, and I've lived in Verdugo Woodlands for almost 30 years. And I'm echoing everyone who's voted option one for La Crescenta Avenue. Several times a year, I drop off my car for service and walk on La Crescenta Avenue to get home and back to collect my car. And the stretch on La Crescenta Avenue is miserable walking there. So adding a bike lane would make us safer biking, walking, and driving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Devron Shadiq, you're on the line.
Good evening to the Transportation and Parking Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am a resident of far north Glendale for the past 30 years. I have a vision of Glendale where we can bike as a realistic and safe form of transportation and for recreation. It would be wonderful if we could bike to work, save gas, save the environment, save our air quality, and do so safely. I would love to bike to work, but my family won't allow me to do so because biking is dangerous. I believe that protected Class 1 bike lanes should be provided wherever possible. But also, wouldn't it be nice if our children could bike the neighborhood the way we did when we were kids? As Ben previously stated, kids are just kids. Can't we give them safe spaces to be kids? As one speaker stated, it isn't just in the movies that kids want to do this. I envision Glendale as a city that in the 21st century is ahead of the game. Because of this, I support Alternative 1, a safe means of biking. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Dave Gallinger, you're on the air.
Hello. Thank you for everyone's time and to the Commission for listening to our comments here. Everybody that's gone before me has just done a terrific opportunity to share their experiences. The 11-year-old student was just fantastic to relate what he has in his daily going to school. If we don't listen to that, that would be a real travesty. So the adults in the room, I think, can make things better for him and any student that follows him at Fremont. So to look at that highway that runs right, that's not a highway, but La Crescent Avenue is like a highway, an expressway, as it's been was said just before me, is just ignoring the facts. And we should make a separate, dedicated bike lane. That's option one. And I just think that it's consistent with what was said before about Vision Zero to reduce collisions and enhance safety. And I just really thank you all for listening to us and giving us this opportunity. One more thing, maybe do an outreach at the school and see what this other parents and faculty would see as a potential way to make that get their feedback to you, because I think it is probably something that we should listen to. And also, last thing, maybe could we? I didn't see the new plan, but if we are doing a separate bike lane, is it possible to do a curving center line of the street to even meander it and slow down the speeds that will be resulting in just the one lane of travel? Something that could be pleasant and also separated with maybe landscaping. All of those things are tools that we can use as urban designers. And it just we'll conclude there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Does that conclude our callers? It sounds like additional folks called in. Okay, thank you. I think with that, we can go ahead and move to, I don't know if it's called discussion or if it's points that the commissioners would like to make. Does anyone want to go ahead and begin?
Thank you. This was very inspirational. I know La Crescent Avenue doesn't have any kind of a safety feature whatsoever, and it's long overdue. But the decisions we make here today would have immediate impacts on everyone's bottom line. So what we need to do is to be able to reach out to more members of our community to be able to see what their thoughts are. So I think we got to do a better job of reaching out to our community and having more public outreach to be able to come maybe at La Crescent School or any of our facilities to be able to hear them exactly what is it that they're requiring. And meanwhile, I don't think we should wait a year or two to implement some of the safety features that La Crescent Avenue currently requires. Adding more crosswalk, adding a stop sign, illuminated solar stop signs, adding things that will reduce traffic, reduce pollution, and it encourages people to bike. Adding a painted bike lane on the side of the street, which I've looked at the videos and the photos, that doesn't exist at all. I mean, those doesn't cost anything. We can implement those immediately, then it will have the impact on the community as well. Meanwhile, we can take a look at the problem that if you put with bike lanes with buffers, would that causes the traffic to transfer to the streets of La Crescenta, Montrose area? Would it be those crazy drivers that they go down on La Crescenta be driving crazy on the residential streets? Those are all the things that we need to discuss and find out if that's going to be an issue or not. But the safety measures and pollution to be a carbon neutral in our near future, which we desperately need, these are the things that we can do right this minute. More crossroad, more stop signs along the way, fix the sidewalks that we need to do, and those could be very helpful.
Thank you. Anyone else want to go?
Well, gosh, first I want to shout out to my ex-fellow commissioners out there. I was wondering where you guys were, but you're doing a good job out there, it's obvious. So having been one of many that participated in the actual bicycle master plan many years ago, you know, it was our idea. It was a wonderful project to be able to look and examine all the streets in Glendale and identify those that could actually be the ones that could start having these improvements, correct, right, with these bike lanes. One of the issues I have a problem with today is both sides, so even people advocating for option one, alternative one, and the gentleman, I think it's Mr. Murphy, who, brave shout out to you for coming up and you know, giving your opinion on this. Everyone is in agreement that there wasn't very good outreach, or there was some sort of a perception that not everyone was reached. I think that that's a very important issue, especially with something as massive a project as this is. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that or taking away from the really legitimate arguments that were being made today in favor of alternative one. But there's something fundamentally, I don't think, not right when we don't have the outreach that we needed to have everybody's opinion is. That's what a community does. That's what a city should do. And that's what should be done in this case where you have this project. You know, you have an elementary school there, and those voices need to be heard. And I'm not, again, suggesting that by listening to those people, it's going to change, right? But I do think in all fairness, and if we're talking about equity, let's give the voice to everybody to be able to hear what they have to say. One of the points I will point out from Mr. Murphy that I thought was a legitimate point is what happens when you go south on La Crescenta and you're in that protective lane and you're in that bike lane and bam, we're back on Verdugo, and what happens, and maybe staff could tell me, what is that transition for a protective bike lane and then all of a sudden coming into how does that end? Maybe you should be considering ending that bike lane earlier, a little bit further north, so that there is no sudden, abrupt kind of transition. So there's a lot of things. I'd love to know, and I don't think it's been a while since we've had a bicycle count. Now, I do recognize the point, as many people said, people are avoiding La Crescenta Avenue because of the obvious, you know, dangers there, so you're not going to get a very accurate maybe count of bicyclists on there. However, I still think that being able to assess the area and where the bicyclists are and the counts of how many bicyclists are in the general area, we haven't done that in quite some time, if I'm not mistaken. I would have also liked to have seen the average daily volume of vehicles that are coming down La Crescenta. I didn't see that here. I would like to get more information. So I personally feel like as somebody who's been on this commission for a while and someone who truly respects all the opinions that were given today, from the most experienced bicyclists to the little ones, I do see that value in alternative one. However, I cannot in good conscience go and advocate for something when I feel that a lot of the citizens haven't had their chance to give their voice on this issue. So that's how I feel.
Mr. Lester?
Sure, thank you. I want to say, first of all, thank you for everyone who took the time to comment, email us, and come out here to speak tonight. I have to say this is the largest sort of response that I've seen in my time on this commission. And I think it speaks volumes to what this means to the community around this issue of basically safety. You know, what this seems to really be about is, you know, do we as a community want La Crescenta Avenue to remain what is essentially a highway or be like a street? We've heard a lot of voices in favor tonight, and I think that the arguments that were made were really impressive. We've also heard some dissent, and trying to understand the dissent for me is important. I take it to be an issue related to concern about auto delay, like being delayed. If you're talking about cut-through traffic, that's why would someone cut through? It's because they were slowed down as they were, trying to traverse the street. So basically, I think in light of that, I think it would be good to have a frank discussion about the time cost of safety. Almost everybody mentioned safety in their comments tonight, even the dissenters. So would it be possible to display this graphic I sent, NTSB? This may be familiar to some people, but there's a very stark relationship between vehicle speed and danger. It's literally exponential. I think the basic message to remember is you're about 5 times as likely to be killed by a car going 30 as a car going 20, and 5 times again as likely to be killed by a car going 40. Another way you can describe it is 20 miles per hour equals falling from the 2nd floor, and 40 miles per hour equals falling from the 7th. We have 46 miles per hour on La Crescent Avenue. So I think this project it's an illustration of something the city has in its planning documents and in various places resolved to try to make Glendale a safe place to move around in multiple modes. And this project is a very important test case as to whether the city can actually achieve that. So that said, it makes sense to acknowledge that there could be delays. It could cause auto delay. And so by a small amount, I think that it was described as manageable, the auto delay. So, while these delays may be small, they're real and they matter to people. They shouldn't be dismissed. Some people commute in and out of the area who have no other use for the neighborhood. Some of these people will never have an interest in a safer, more vital La Crescent Avenue, even if it becomes a remarkably more appealing, safer street for all users. So basically, I think it's important to just say, for me, it's difficult to argue that a slight inconvenience is worth even a single life. And so I just want to make this point to highlight how important safety is in this case, in this project. I'd like to ask my colleagues to support this option 1. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll also share some comments, and I actually have a couple questions of staff as well. And I want to start by saying how much I really appreciate everyone's input, folks that showed up today, folks that called in. It means so much to us to be able to hear from the personal experiences of everyone, so thank you for engaging with us in this process. I feel compelled in terms of the content of the alternative 1 by the comments that were shared with us both in email and in person. And let me go through a couple of the reasons, but I have some questions about the pass-through traffic. So I think kind of speaking to what you had just mentioned, I do feel that our most important choice here is about safety. And I do think choosing the most safe option that would reduce deaths and, of course, provide alternative transportation alternatives is really key. I did see that both options look to slow speeds, so I think everyone kind of agrees that we need to slow speeds down. That seemed more clear to me in the alternative 1, because by design, you're slowing the speed of the traffic, not just by posting a different speed limit on the signs. I think that in my personal experience, walking that, driving that, I do also, we didn't really talk about this in the discussion, but when I read the report, it talked about that kind of median where you would have turn lanes. You could turn to the left and to the right. And that seems very helpful to me. I think you see a lot of issues turning left, for example, going south onto La Crescenta, venturing out into that traffic, which again is speeding. It feels very dangerous. There doesn't seem to be a lot of traffic. Again, this is my personal experience. I think we heard that through some of the comments as well. I was really compelled by the accident reduction analysis. Again, not seeing a lot of cars. I guess some of my question had to do with what cut-through traffic we were really anticipating, given, again, that we haven't seen a large number of cars in use, or excuse me, the traffic jams don't occur there so much. I was really compelled by the users of the school, and as well the numerous transportation professionals that spoke. We don't always have that as well, so that was really appreciative. I'm curious about the cut-through traffic question. I also would say in terms of the outreach, I started when you were giving the presentation on outreach, I actually initially was like, wow, this is great. Because I think we've had other meetings where I felt some of we didn't have as much outreach or we didn't have a lot of feedback. This actually speaks fairly high in terms of the number of feedback. It's still probably not ultimately where we want to be. And it's sometimes getting feedback, particularly when people are not always out, venturing out as much. We're still a little bit in the post kind of stay-at-home orders. I think the outreach events that are oriented towards the general public are very compelling. I think, it looks like we heard from a number of the homeowners associations, which I think are excellent, but can be limiting in terms of who's speaking. I don't, see apartment residents. I think we heard a lot about the need to reach out to the school community in particular, and I guess that's where my question kind of lies at this point. If this is serving as a public hearing, do you still have as staff an opportunity to do additional outreach prior to it going to council? So I'll pause with that question, or you can write that question down and then answer whatever is the appropriate format I'll pause.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson Pro Tem. Absolutely. In terms of the, first and foremost, we can always do better in terms of public outreach. This one, on this particular project, I think we, based on the direction we received from our council, and as you mentioned, we did go in terms of trying to catch a large number of folks, whether through the community organizations or through the community outreach initially that we had on this project. So we did try to expand our pool of participants as much as possible. You can never capture 100% of folks, even through direct mailers that we send. That was an example, as Mr. Oganessian mentioned. We mailed out almost 2,100 of these mailers initially, which is a large volume, but we didn't have that many participate in our community meeting. So can we do better? Absolutely. At this point, since we started the outreach program since March, we've reached out to a lot of organizations. Some of them have returned our phone calls, some of them haven't. So there's that issue also. You can reach out to different groups, and if they don't show any interest, we may not be able to reach all of them. The idea of school is a great idea. We can certainly do that. However, we feel, unless this is a recommendation of the Transportation and Parking Commission, we feel that we have a good cross-section of the community at this point. We can always do more if that's the recommendation, but based on what we've seen so far, I think we have a fairly good representation. Again, we're not perfect. This is not we could do always better, but it's really the recommendation of the Transportation and Parking Commission at this point. We as staff believe that we have done more than what we usually do in terms of these projects because of the gravity and the passions on both sides, and we feel that we've done that. If I may address one of your other comments, and and also Commissioner Kubian's comments. I do want to ask our traffic engineer, Pastor Casanova, to come up and address this issue of the cut-through traffic. In the presentation, when we said that the traffic volumes or the traffic delays are manageable, that was not by any means to dismiss the concerns. However, based on the modeling that we've done and the simulations that we've run, based on this alternative one, the minutes that the delay would cause, that's what we were talking about in terms of manageable. And I'd like, if it's okay with you, for Mr. Casanova to come up and quantify what those delays are based on the modeling that we've done.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. In elaborating on what Mr. Imrani mentioned, in terms of the specific delay along the corridor, when we looked at that and added up the delay along the entire 1.6 mile stretch, it equated to somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. I know what Commissioner Lester had some concern about that, regarding that doesn't, it seems too much. But what occurs at each individual intersection is that it's the overall delay at the intersection. So one might think as you're driving down that you're going to concentrate, well, how much more delay am I going to have driving on La Crescenta? But the actual delay is experienced by other moves at each intersection. On the cross streets, for example, the left turns, as well as vehicles on La Crescenta. So in answer to the specific question, the increase in that overall delay would hover somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes along the entire corridor. We can also see that, I believe we saw a VMT map, which takes a look at traffic assessment differently. It doesn't look at it and quantify it from respects of how much vehicles are being delayed, but rather how many vehicle miles are being traveled in the corridor. That map itself also, in a sense, shows how delay impacts driver behavior. So we saw that along La Crescenta, we saw it was green because the vehicle miles traveled reduced, but along other corridors, those vehicle miles traveled would increase, and we saw some of that red. The reason for that is some of that delay that's experienced on the corridor. The traffic model, what it'll do, it'll show you that the driver behavior typically is to start seeking other routes. And we saw on the plus note, is we saw that a lot of those drivers would take the 2 freeway. So that's also something to consider, that in the La Crescenta corridor, that could, in the past, has been used as a, let's call it a freeway cut-through. A project of this type could have that tendency to push traffic maybe to the corridors where it belongs on the freeway. However, the map also showed that there would be some potential residual change in driver behavior to those side streets and the cut-through traffic that's been mentioned. So I hope that puts some light into the subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Just was wondering, you're not saying that any individual car will be delayed by that amount. You're talking about delay over the whole area, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
So what we're talking about is seconds, likely seconds. We all just saw the video where there was very little congestion. Several commentators have already said that there was very little congestion. So I think it might be a little misleading to talk in the terms of minutes, in terms of any individual car. We're talking about seconds, correct?
That is generally correct. Unfortunately, I don't have the results of the calculation in the study. However, that is typically correct. On the intersection delay, you'll usually see seconds, and the seconds can vary, but they're assigned to each particular move at the intersection, the left turns, the throughs, and in both directions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Please.
I just would like to point out, I mean, this idea about outreach in schools is good, but I would like to commend the city for its outreach efforts. There were HOAs, the HOAs were consulted. They've been doing outreach since February. The number of people participating was rather high, actually, for this type of I mean, as the crowd here tonight illustrates, was rather high. I don't know, has there been any other public works project that has garnered more than 100 people putting in comments at this early stage?
Commissioner Lester, not to my knowledge, but this is a unique project, obviously.
Thank you. I just feel like this project is been demonstrated to have strong support in the community. I think that it's time to make a motion in support of option 1.
Can I see if I can get an answer to a question? Like, so the details of this particular project, again, going back to the idea of the protective bike lane and then merging down into Verdugo, how are you deciding as the city where and that, how does that transition?
Commissioner Yakubian, in response to 2 questions that you asked, actually, one about the merging for southbound traffic. Currently, 2 lanes of travel southbound and La Crescenta merge into 1 lane. And that 1 lane opens up into 2 lanes as it merges onto Cañada Boulevard. And the current traffic, the ADT traffic, is being managed with that 1 lane of travel southbound.
So no, I didn't mean about the vehicular lanes of travel. I meant the proposed protective bike lane as it's going down south of La Crescenta Avenue. How do you foresee that coming to the point of termination and then continuity and then all of a sudden not having that? So does that pose a danger to all of a sudden being in a protective lane and then all of a sudden being in a place where you've got a lot of merging vehicles coming in from Verdugo onto that one street?
So there is a existing buffered shoulder that accommodates the emerging traffic from 2 lanes to 1 lane. Also, that area merges into a Class 3 bike route that continues onto Cañada Boulevard. So the Class 2 bike lane will converge into a Class 3 bike route that was installed as part of our recently completed Cañada Improvements Project, completed over 6 years ago. So when that project is up for rehabilitation in the future, that corridor will also potentially be further studied for additional bicycle improvements.
Okay. One last question that popped into my head. There's no issue with emergency vehicles and arterial pass-through, is there?
So in regards to the emergency vehicle access, we have consulted with the fire department, and if alternative 1 is chosen, the addition of that center turn lane will be most likely used by the fire department vehicles, and they haven't expressed any concern with a roadway realignment on the corridor.
That's good to know. Okay.
And in regards to your ADT question that you had asked, the current corridor experiences approximately 12,000 to 14,000 vehicles per day. As part of the bicycle study, we actually took into account the corridor volumes when the 210 construction was occurring on the freeway. So a majority of those vehicles were using La Crescenta. So we actually used a 16,000 approximate ADT for the study, which showed that the congestion, again, would be at manageable levels. And roadway repurposing projects are usually completed for corridors with less than 20,000 vehicles in ADT volume.
And just to go on with what you're saying, I like the idea of this happening, well, alternative 1. I have, again, and I understand the outreach being done, but common sense says when I have people getting up, and the majority of them, speakers, advocating for alternative 1, making the comments that they felt that, wow, we felt that this wasn't really announced as well as it could be. And these are people advocating for alternative 1. That should be an indication that perhaps, we should be stopping and seeing how we can best do this. Again, I'm not saying it's to change it, but if we're going to be going forward with projects, we must come up with a way, and I think there was a suggestion about reaching out. We've got to be able to do this. Otherwise, we don't want to give the appearance to our city that those who are speaking maybe the loudest or have the opportunity to speak and they didn't get the chance to speak are maybe moving forward in the direction they want to move the city. And it needs to be done cohesively, together,
We're all for safety, we're all for making things right, but I do think that that's an issue that must be addressed and how to improve that. That's my comment.
I agree with Commissioner Yakubian about outreach. I'm all for option one. I think safety should be our first priority. We do not want to lose anyone's life. It needs to be safe. Our city needs to be safe. La Crescent is way overdue. Needs to have some rehabilitation done to it. But again, as we mentioned before, I know I had people reached out to me prior to this, and they had no idea that this thing is going on. So we need to do a better job reaching out to, at least saying that we did have this community outreach, and then people were there, and then everybody wants number one, and at that point, with clear conscience, you can go forward and say, okay, we want to implement it. But I'm all for safety, and I think option one would be a beautiful alternative that our children, our parents, and everyone can utilize, and instead of driving cars and polluting the air, using the option one would eliminate all the other extra steps in the safety issues that we have. But again, I think we need to do a little bit of better outreach, and then hopefully reach out to a bigger pool of people, and then at that point we can make a better decision of what is it we want to do at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a couple thoughts too, having heard the other commissioners, and I was kind of mostly done with my thoughts about the outreach. I do see more folks here than we often see. And sometimes when I hear people say I just barely heard of this, I still think, well, we're here, you're here. And that's better than nothing. I guess what I'm hearing is, I'm not making any sense. Let me start over. Outreach is really important. Getting fair input from everyone is really important. I'm also feeling really compelled to make a safe choice as soon as we can. I'm not sure what additional information would be gleaned with the additional outreach. I felt we heard a lot of very compelling reasons why alternative one is a safe choice and to do it as soon as possible. I was also looking at the alternative two. The folks that seemed in support of that were concerned about cut through. I think that's problematic for the neighborhood, but it does not compare to the safety issues that we heard, particularly in relationship to the proximity of the schools. And I think in good conscience couldn't permit sharrows with the speeds that we have here. That's very, very problematic. Sharrows are a much less preferential choice, and given that we have a chance here to really kind of restripe and do such a comprehensive and cohesive change to the street, I think I feel really strongly about alternative one. I think maybe in terms of the outreach, because we've been talking about that a lot and we've talked about it previously, perhaps we can hear at a later date a kind of a report back on what the staff's approach is, like what the formula, in a way, there's never really a formula because it changes with different types of projects, but I think it would be helpful for us to kind of hear what are the steps involved and the kind of standard types of outreach that's accomplished, and maybe there's some opportunities to rethink that. I mean, I know that a lot of cities have changed their outreach. When we now have virtual, we have in-person meetings. You can have kind of virtual open house. Maybe there's a way to kind of think about more broadly appealing to folks and getting some of the input in a larger setting. So that's some of my additional thoughts.
Before we go, can you refresh our memory about what happened with Verdugo Road and the controversy with Verdugo Road, kind of similar to the situation with La Crescent, on the community not quite in par, and then the outrage that kind of ensued with the whole Verdugo Road diet? I think it was like 1999.
Commissioner Yakubian, I was not here at the time, but I will defer to Mr. Organisian if he remembers or if he knows anything about that part, or Mr. Casanova.
Yes, unfortunately, I don't have facts, but definitely it was discussed. I had conversations with the previous principal engineer. My understanding is that there were some concerns at that time regarding either emergency access or major disaster sort of access. But again, nothing specific that I can bring to the table to mention about Verdugo.
Okay.
About
And I'll do fairness to the people who voted, who were not in favor of alternative one, because I want to make sure we flush it all out. What was Sycamore Canyons? They unanimously voted against this idea. What was their concern? What were they saying in this regard?
The biggest concern was cut-through traffic. As we saw from the BMT model, that there would be the potential for cut-through traffic. Specifically, Mr. Murphy and others in the community meeting mentioned that currently they already experience some cut-through traffic from vehicles that are driving on Honolulu and want to avoid the La Crescenta intersection. So they'll have a tendency to turn south on Ramsdale, I believe it is, and go down to Sycamore and use their street as a cut-through. They're concerned with any sort of additional delay on La Crescenta could increase that cut-through traffic through their neighborhood. They also mentioned their neighborhood does not have curb and gutter, they don't have sidewalks, and no lighting. So those various elements combined with the cut-through traffic was the majority of their concerns.
Thank you.
Looks like you might be ready to have a motion or to have additional thoughts.
No, I don't have additional thoughts. I would like to make a motion to approve alternative one, to recommend alternative one, please.
I'll second that.
I'll take roll call. Chairperson Pro Tem,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubagian.
Yes, with more outreach, if that's possible. I don't know if we can add that in there too. Their concerns are legitimate, but I am for option one.
You're suggesting a friendly amendment
Yes.
for additional outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So my vote is no, with the caveat that I don't feel very comfortable voting in favor of the alternative in light of the serious concerns I believe that people have that haven't had the chance to express it. In light of the history of Glendale's history of trying to do road diets. So that would be my vote.
Can I ask a question to that? So the reference that you're making is a road diet proposal from 1999?
So my concern is that this has been done before where there's issues of, and residents come out in favor of it, and then there's a major upheaval in terms of what's being done. And I feel as if, and just basing on what I'm hearing, I understand the advocacy for it, I don't feel as if the city has gotten a good cohesive input from everyone. I'm glad there's 100 people. The city is much larger than 100 people, and I feel that we need to go that extra step. Obviously, there's people out there that are very passionate about not having it, and they weren't here to speak today. But I do feel that, in my sense as a commissioner, I would love to be, especially with a project this big. I mean, this isn't a speed hump on a small residential street. This is a big arterial street in the city of Glendale, and I feel like 100 people coming out and speaking, while most of them saying that, we didn't even know about this. Something doesn't sit right with me. So I don't feel like, although as passionate as they are, and I feel for it, I don't feel that I, right in this moment, can make a vote yes on this alternative one.
It looks like the motion fails.
The motion passed, and
Hold up with the outreach.
If I may add,
However you want to phrase it.
if you're proposing that the that the motion be amended, which I didn't hear, then that would be fine. We would, yes, have to then vote. We would need a second on that amendment and then to vote again.
And I think we'd have to discuss what that amendment is. If you're saying he said yes or no, but yes with the caveat there's additional outreach.
Absolutely.
So I was proposing that the amendment to pass it fails, but we can reopen it with a proposal for what outreach would look like to gain a 3-vote yes.
Absolutely. We need to be fair. And as she mentioned, it needs to be something that everybody can participate in. So that's the only thing. I think option 1 is great. It brings 100% safety, but we need to hear from everybody. As fellow commissioner mentioned, is that we need to hear from more people. Maybe just outreach at a school to at least gather those things and, you know, find out exactly where we stand in all of this stuff. I don't want it to be imposive. And then it has happened in other projects that I was involved with. When we try to implement something, all of a sudden when the day comes in, then you start doing it. People come in at, what are you guys doing? We never knew about it. What is going on and all of that stuff. So I'm trying to avoid that. I'm saying that let the community know exactly what the city of Glendale is doing. And at that point, everybody's agreed, and then we can move forward.
So perhaps I can try. Looks like you're ready.
Could I?
Okay.
Well, no. Could I? Why don't we let the city council decide if they want more outreach?
So if you're fine with that, is that your original motion to approve alternative 1?
Yes, it is. The question is
Yes.
your vote yes or no?
My vote is yes, with the option of being able to reach out to more people at that point, so we can make a better understanding of.
For clarity, is that at the point between now and the council meeting, or at the council's discretion?
Right.
Is that already on the agenda, or maybe walk us through some of the options?
Sure. Well, we had tentatively scheduled this item for September 13th meeting of the council.
From now to September 13, are we going to be able to do the outreach, or we're not? And then we can have, as fellow commissioner mentioned, we can have the city council decide on that, and saying that we do have 3 yeses on alternative 1. And then the problem that we foresee is happening right now is the community outreach. And if they implement a community outreach at that point, then let them do it, and then everybody hears about it, then we can move forward with the project.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, members of a commission, we need to define what this outreach is. If we're talking about holding or trying to hold a meeting at the Fremont Elementary, like a community meeting, we can certainly work on that and try to get a meeting going. But that's really the extent of what we can do between now and the council meeting. Keep in mind, for all the council meetings, we have to have the staff report prepared a few weeks in advance. That doesn't leave us a whole lot of time. We can try to have that community meeting with the school, but it depends. I can't answer that question quite right now. It has to be, we have to reach out to the school and do mailers and establish a date. I don't think there is a whole lot of time between now and September 13th.
How much time do you need to do that?
Well, we have to give everybody advance notice in terms of any kind of meeting that we put, so that they can try to attend, similar to what we've done with these community meetings we've done right now. So I'll just leave it at that. But in terms of the decision of the commission,
How about letting council decide about outreach? They can punt on their schedule.
Absolutely.
They can punt on their schedule
Yes.
if they wanna do more outreach.
I think the consensus that we all are for safety, and we all are for option 1. It's just we want to make sure that, we understand, we hear everybody here, we just want to make sure that conflict wouldn't happen down the road. That's the only thing. Otherwise, all of us are for safety and reducing carbon pollution and all of that stuff. So it will cater to that. This option 1 will cater to that. My concern is that I want everybody to hear about it and know about it and willingly looking forward to it. That's That's my thought. So if you're saying council would decide on it, I'm okay with that.
So we have 3.
Yes.
Do you want to repeat your original motion, and don't we revote for clarity?
I'm for option 1 with the option of community outreach, if that's possible.
So asking staff to make their best effort at community outreach with
If that's
involving
possible.
the schools in advance of that. But otherwise, it's a...
But otherwise, yeah, it's a yes, yeah. The option is great. My only concern is the community outreach. I mean, I don't know how we can implement that. If it's not possible, then it needs to be for the next council meeting, but...
I think ultimately what this comes down to is if that's a recommendation, then nothing is needed. If that is an amendment that you are trying to make, then your vote needs to be no, and then you
So
need
the
to make...
recommendation cannot be yes with an basically thing, so we need to make sure that our
That
recommendation is
wouldn't
either yes or no.
accomplish the vote now. You need to either vote yes and give a recommendation, or you need to vote no and then make a new motion that has an amendment.
That's a tough spot. Well, I'm going to vote yes on the option 1 and move forward. Hopefully, council will recognize it and go forward from there.
Thank you. You're looking at me for further, I'm saying something. We're concluding that agenda item. And we are going to our oral communication, and there's a gentleman on the phone who has been very, very patient. And this is discussion to limited to items not part of this agenda. And it says each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
My name is
Joe Oliver, you're on the line. You're on the air.
Good evening, members of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As I stated earlier, my name is Joe Oliver. I'm a resident of property owner at 2800, 2900 block of Piedmont Avenue in the Glendale incorporated area of La Crescent. My purpose speaking before you this evening is to implore you to address an issue that has become a traffic and parking thorn in the sides of residents on this block of Piedmont for the past 3 years. Specifically, the parking of large construction and transport, as well as private vehicles owned by a single resident, 19 vehicles at last count. In addition to monopolizing street parking, this individual is operating contracted construction and other businesses out of the home involving the use of the large vehicles and deliveries and shipping of large equipment to and from this property located at 2900 Piedmont Avenue. This is, to my understanding, a violation of the City of Glendale's ordinances regarding the operation of a business from private property. Members of the Commission, this issue is not unknown to the City. Glendale police have responded numerous times regarding the parking violations, as well as the verbal threats from the tenant towards residents when police are summoned. Despite numerous visits and some citations, the offenses continue. It is now my understanding the tenant is forcing the property owner to pursue an eviction process in order to remove him from the property. We understand the city issued a one-time only 1 week parking permit for commercial moving trucks to allow the tenant to move his personal property from the location. The tenant is using that permit to park a large recreational vehicle at the location, despite there being no movement of property onto that vehicle. The 2 vehicles he has parked at this location under the use of the permit are each approximately 3 feet on either side of a fire hydrant. In addition, this tenant has parked a motorcycle such that view of the hydrant is obscured from the street. This poses a safety hazard to residents on the streets, as the fire department has no immediate access. Numerous residents have expressed concern to each other and police regarding the fire hydrant location being obscured. Several residents contacted permit services and were assured that this would be a one-time permit. However, a second permit was issued. The resident has still not moved any property to the oversized vehicles. Residents request the City of Glendale exercise more discretion in issuing additional large vehicle parking permits for this tenant in order to reduce congestion, lack of parking, and further worry of residents concerning damage to the street from leaking oil and other fluids which are evident and damaging the street to the point that additional costs to the city will be needed for repair in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your patience. Our next agenda item, commission staff comments and updates. Looks like we're solid. Final is adjournment. You have a commission update.
No, I don't have an update, but I wanted to, if possible, I wanted to make a motion. I'd like for this commission to have a chance to see in advance what the city plans to apply for with regards to Measure M, R, and other local dollars allocated to Glendale. Usually we see things as information-only items. In other words, they're already underway. It would be good if this commission could play a more active role in helping the city decide what to apply for, with an eye to ensuring there is a priority on making our streets safer. So if one of my fellow commissioners would second that.
Can I get a little more clarity? So you're asking in this setting that we would receive updates on funding proposals, requests as they put in for the grants?
It was a request for this commission to be a little more involved a little earlier in the process, so that we could get a sense of what type of projects were being applied for, and not just getting after the fact information-only reports on, oh, we're applying for this project and for that project. So it would just be a little bit more information a little earlier.
I just have a comment. I have two comments, I guess, to that. One is that I do like the idea, and I do think money means policy to some degree. Like, I like the idea of us being involved in helping to set policy. I guess I get a little concerned when it's like managing the departments. I as a city employee myself, I work for the city of Los Angeles. I think sometimes it can be problematic if you're having to, it's the turnaround time for requesting funds. I think logistically, I'm kind of struggling with what that request looks like. And I wonder if there's a version where we're kind of hearing the launching of programs or kind of some priorities and direction. If that's more of an update than it is the grants per se. But I'm open to,
Right.
discussing.
No, it's not intended as a micromanagement suggestion. It was more of an idea of just being a little bit earlier, so we would have a little bit more of an idea. I think what you say is right, the way you described it.
Like perhaps standard updates that address the launching or initiation of work programs?
Madam Chairperson Pro Tem, yes, we can certainly bring reports on the status of where we are with Measure M funding and what we've asked for on a quarterly basis, if that's acceptable.
Is it like informational, basically, thing that we can actually be aware of what's really happening? Because we're meeting once every 2 months. So I think I understand what his point of view is. So if we get the information prior to our meetings, maybe we can digest the whole thing a little bit better. So I kind of agree with it. I think not a bad idea.
Just what the city is pursuing is not known to us until it's
Absolutely.
already well
I was
underway.
gonna second
That's
it,
all.
yeah. I think it's a good idea, getting some information ahead of time.
I mean, part of the impetus is just the sense that the things like the pedestrian plan have not gone very far in implementation so far, and be interesting to see have slightly more involvement, or at least a little bit more involvement in the process.
To help nudge and set priorities.
And if I may add, we already do bring these before the commission as a reporting mechanism on what we're applying for. So it's just a matter of we can provide periodic updates.
I think I interrupted the flow. So you proposed a motion, and it sounded like you seconded it.
I do second that motion. I think if we do hear the information ahead of time, we have a better idea of understanding how things are. And, I mean, you can actually do any changes if you just go with the same routine. It's just, I think we need to have a little bit of more input. I don't know if that's the right word for it or not, but understanding maybe would help, making a better decision.
I think it kind of speaks to the spirit of what we heard today, too. Using this body perhaps to introduce things early, it gets items known.
It's really sad that we don't have enough time to do an outreach. It's just, I don't see, I mean, I've looked at some of the other projects that the city had as far as sending mailers out. This post office has this great tool in their hand, and it's 1/4 of the cost of what the city does right now. You can send the postcards out with the pictures, saying everything, what's going on, what's happening, and people can, chime in, they could participate and all that stuff. And we just kind of going on the same routine, and that's kind of bothers me. I do want to get more participation. One of the biggest problems that I had on any organization that I was involved with is the biggest problem was participation. And we're not doing a good job at that. I think we need to reach out. Option one, again, I'm going back to that. It's a great alternative, but you do need to hear from the other side of the story, and I do want to applaud her for bringing that up. It's a very important subject. We do need to hear everybody's concern. Although what our feelings are, that what's safe and what's not safe and all of that stuff, there's so many things we can do right now that we're not, and it's because of, being, as he mentioned, 2 months it takes us to get together, and by the time we digest the whole thing, it'll just be very difficult. So getting the information before would really help us out. Community outreach, really, and I'm willing to help you out if you do want, because I'm very familiar with that program. It gives you the demographics, it gives you how many businesses, how many residentials, and the fact that it costs you 1/4 of the thing that you guys are doing right now is just mind-boggling. Why aren't we implementing it?
I just want to jump in real quick because the Verdugo Road project that was done, and I have people who may not go back that long to understand.
I know what you're talking about.
They implemented and voted, they're going to do the changes and infrastructural changes, and okay, we're going to do it, and there was a lot of fervor. The outreach wasn't done to the extent it should have been done. The city implemented and put money into fixing and changing the road. The community outrage, and that goes to your point, after they started doing it, was so intense that the city had to back up and undo everything that it had done. I'm not saying that that would have been the situation, but why wouldn't we take those necessaries? And I'll be honest with you, if it weren't for the pro-alternative one people in force today, many of them saying that they were kind of shocked that there wasn't the outreach and that they didn't know, and they knew people who didn't know. That was for me, a huge red flag that, here are the advocates.
Agreed.
These aren't the opponents. These are the advocates saying that it wasn't even well kind of dispersed, the information. So for that reason, we rehash it. But but it is important to understand history of Glendale and to go back to what happened in Verdugo Road. And people may not understand, but that was a lesson that we should learn from as a city, is to make sure that we do hear everybody. And I know the people came here were loud, and I agreed with so many of them and what they were saying. However, that doesn't negate the fact that we have to listen to all the nooks and crannies and everyone in that area, because at the end of the day, the city doesn't want to have to spend money to go back and redo what they thought was a slam dunk. So it takes a little effort in the beginning, a little extra effort, but then at the end of the day, it's all kumbaya, and everybody is all in agreement, and there shouldn't be any issues.
Absolutely. One last thing I just want to mention is that one of the small projects that happened in North Glendale was a crosswalk, and that created such a chaos. It was implemented, and it created chaos because all the traffic went to the streets, and all the residents started uproaring and coming out saying, what is this going on? And it took the city about 7-8 months to redo it. So I have, as my commissioner mentioned, it has happened before. we implement stuff and we go back, try to undo it. That's really just uncalled for. We should be able to do our job right from the get-go, reach out to right people. If your mailers are not getting anywhere, I mean, I watched the last meetings, you only had 10 people that chimed in, and then you put signs on the trees and the posts. That's not gonna do the job. You need to utilize those things that it's available to us to be able to find out the actual demographics, which post office does give it for free. And we're not using that. We're not utilizing that. And then we have to make decisions that will have an immediate impact on everyone's bottom line. That's the thing that it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I hope that the council can consider that and say that, okay, let's do the outreach, and then we can go back spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on, rehabilitation and all that stuff, which I'm all for it, by the way.
Thank you. I'd say as a point of order, we have a motion and a second, and do we need to vote, or is that?
You don't need a roll call. For a motion like this to bring something back, you just need a motion and a second.
Great. And it sounds like we're very impassioned about outreach. I think with that, I'm adjourning the meeting, 8:12 p.m. Thank you for
You need to request a motion to adjourn.
I am requesting a motion to adjourn. I don't have that agency.
I'll make them, sorry.
Second, go ahead.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Excellent. Adjourning, 8:12.
Thank you. Thank you so much.